Welcome to the Sonnet episode.
The podcast where we talk into the timeless words of the bard himself, William Shakespeare. Each week, we explore the beauty, rhythm, and hidden meanings behind Shakespeare's most iconic sonnets. And for today's episode, we will talk about his Sonnet 130.
Whether you're a seasoned fan or just starting your journey into the world of poetry, you're in the right place, right, partner?
Yes, correct. But before we delve this sonnet, let's first talk about William Shakespeare. With our special guest, please help me welcome Prudence Eve Sortalas, a BS Ed English student. A round of applause, please.
Thank you so much for having me here. And I am so excited to be here.
So first things first, who was William Shakespeare? And why is he considered the most important in the literature?
William Shakespeare was an English playwright, poet, and actor, born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon. He is called the greatest writer in the English language. His works, especially his plays and sonnets, have had a lasting impact on storytelling, language, and even how we understand human emotions.
Now let's talk about his sonnet. What makes them so special?
Shakespeare's sonnets are emotional and well crafted, so they explore themes like love, time, and beauty. And what's fascinating is like how he packs so much meaning into his 14 lines, yes, using metaphor, rhythm, or whatsoever.
Do you know who he wrote most of his sonnets for?
Yes. That's a little bit of mystery. Yeah, some were addressed to a fair youth, others to a dark lady, and scholars have debated their identities for centuries. What's clear is that the emotions in these poems feel very real and special. Very real and personal.
Great.
Yeah.
Last question for now. Why do you think Shakespeare's work, especially his sonnet, is still matter today?
I think it's because he captured the human experience so honestly. Yeah. Whether it's love, jealousy, ambition, or sorrow, his words remind us that people deep down haven't changed all that much. His sonnets show how timeless poetry is.
Shakespeare might have lived over 400 years ago, but his voice still speaks to us. Miss Prudence, thank you so much for sharing and guesting. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was also my pleasure to be here.
Now, when we think about a love poems, we usually picture out a flowery compliments and perfect comparison. But William Shakespeare had a different idea. Now, let's listen to his few lines of Sonnet 130.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red.
Right from the start, he flips the script. Instead of comparing his lover to a glowing sun and perfect roses, he tells us that she's not like those things. Her lips aren't coral red. Her eyes doesn't shine like the sun. And her hair like black wires.
Wow.
It might sound like he's roasting his mistress, but he actually doing something quite bold. Back in his time, poets often exaggerated beauty with unrealistic comparison. William Shakespeare saying that real love doesn't need lies.
Throughout the sonnet, he continues this honest tone.
I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks.
He's not tearing her down. He's lifting her up with proof. And the real punch, comes in the final two lines, the volta or turn of the sonnet.
And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
That's where the magic happens. He's telling us, my love may not fit the poetic mold, but she's real. And she's just as rare and beautiful as any woman who's been described with fancy, fake comparisons. So, what can we take from Sonnet 130 today? That honestly, in love is powerful. That beauty doesn't have to follow the rules. And that Shakespeare, even over 400 years ago, knew how to write a love poem that cuts through the fluff and goes straight to the heart.
Day by William Shakespeare. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
Now, there will be another guest joining us today, partner.
Who is that?
So let me introduce to you Miss Abigail de la Cruz, also a BSN English student.
A round of applause, please.
So, who here to share and her interpretation and thoughts on why his sonnets still speak us centuries later. So, Miss de la Cruz, welcome to the podcast.
Good day. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this sonnet. It's one of my favorites.
Let's start with the basic. Sonnet 130 really stand out from the typical love poetry of Shakespeare's time, right?
Yes, correct.
So, what's your take on that?
I believe that most poets back then were all about or talking about women, comparing them to goddesses, stars, flowers, and even gold. And it's a very super idealized stuff. And here comes Shakespeare, and he was saying, my mistress eyes are nothing like the sun. And suddenly we are in a real, raw kind of love poem. And it's very funny and honest at the same time.
Yeah, it almost sounds like he's roasting her. But there's something sweet about it too. Why do you think he wrote it that way?
I believe that I think he wanted to compare or to challenge the idea that love should be based on perfection and exaggeration. And he's saying like, I see her flaws, I see who she really is, and I love her anyway. And for me, that's the real definition of love. And I believe he is celebrating authenticity.
That is different, especially now. Do you think that's why the sonnets still resonate today in today's world?
Definitely today, wherein we live in an age of social media filters, unrealistic beauty standards, and pressure to be perfect. And here comes Sonnet 130 reminds us that love should not be based on perfection, but it's all about the connection.
That's so true. There's something refreshing about a poem that says, hey, love can be imperfect and still be beautiful. Do you think people today can still learn something from Shakespeare approach?
For sure, whether it's in a relationship, self-image, or even the way we express ourselves. And this sonnet teaches us to value truth over performance. And in a world full of curated images and comparisons, that's very powerful.
Love that. Before we wrap up, if you could sum up Sonnet 130 in just few words, what would it be?
I would say real, honest, and still romantic.
That is perfect! Miss Abigail, thank you so much for joining today and sharing your thoughts. I think a lot of our listeners will walk away seeing this sonnet and maybe even love itself a little
Thanks for
different.
having me. It was a great chat.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Sonnet 130.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow, share the podcast.
Next week, we're looking for another Shakespeare sonnet, so stay tuned. Until then, keep reading and keep it real.